I'm Jenny Miller, I'm the Domestic Abuse Service Manager at Rochdale Connections Trust, and I'm here today with Liesl. So, welcome Liesl.
Thank you.
And can you just tell me a little bit about your background? Who makes you up, your family?
Yeah, so I'm currently the Business Support Manager at Rochdale Connections Trust. I am married, it is my second marriage, and we have 4 children and 2 grandchildren between us.
So, what's your story about?
My story is quite varied, from being brought up in an abusive household where my father was an alcoholic. He abused my mum on a regular basis, to me immigrating over here with the ex-husband and 2 children. But I think the way I was brought up obviously had a profound effect on my perspective and formed my development in the growing up years.
Okay, so what happened to you then?
Let me start at the beginning. My dad used to drink a lot every day. We knew he was an alcoholic. We used to find little bottles of alcohol hidden all over the house, in the garden. We had some in the toilet cistern, in the swimming pool collection basket. We used to call it the weir. We used to find little bottles of alcohol in there. Obviously it was particularly bad over weekends, and I remember once we had a whole lot of people over for a barbecue on a Saturday afternoon, and there were a few of us children over, and we were jumping on the bed as kids do, and my dad got extremely angry with us and he hit me really hard. But me being a kid, I didn't bend when I was told to bend, so the belt buckle got me on my back. I ended up not being able to walk for a good few hours. So yeah, that was one of the weekends that my mom kind of stepped in and said, right, that's it, you're never disciplining the children again, and that was left up to her to do. Obviously my mom also never helped matters much. She would always have a go at him when he came home drunk and in that state, and this would obviously cause major fights. I remember he regularly abused or hit her. He used to shout at her, scream at her, punch her. There were a number of times she laid a charge of assault. The police would come over, he'd be put in jail sometimes because he was that drunk. But the charges would never stick, because she always would take them back the following day or the following week. And I do remember a couple of times that do vividly stick in my mind, and that was once when I was about 14, my mom bending over a cupboard to get a pot to cook us some dinner, and he kicked her so hard that she fell forward. She couldn't get up and walk. When she went to the hospital, it transpired that he'd broken her coccyx, and that to this day is still not repaired. She can walk, but she obviously still has back problems, and she has a lot of pain, especially when the weather hits, really cold weather. She has to take a lot of medication. So that was one occasion that particularly sticks out in my mind. Another one was my brother's birthday party. He came home drunk and felt that he was the master of the house, and he passed out on the front step. So anyone who had to collect their kids from the birthday party had to either step over him or go around the back of the property to pick up their kids. So again, that kind of sticks out in my mind. That's the kind of thing we had to deal with on a weekly basis.
How old would you have been at that time?
Then I was about 11.
And your brother?
7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really kind of traumatic kind of insights into your family.
Definitely.
So how did it, as an 11-year-old, how did that make you feel?
It was extremely embarrassing, just knowing that people were coming around and having to step over your father and laughing at him in the background, and laughing about the situation, and you sat there watching what's going on. It's really quite traumatizing at times when things like that happen. I remember another time when I was a little bit older at this stage. My dad had my mother around her neck. Her feet were off the ground. She was turning blue. And I grabbed the first thing that I could find and I smashed it over his arms. I ended up breaking the one arm and severely bruising the other. And the next day he didn't even know what had happened to him. He thought he'd fallen and hurt himself. So it just shows you that the mindset that he's in when he got into that state. He had no idea what he was doing.
Did anybody around your family at the time, I don't know, schools or mums, friends or family, did anybody kind of know about what was going on?
A lot of people knew what was going on. The doctors knew what was going on. They tried giving my mum anti-alcohol tablets, but with an alcoholic you have to yourself say, yes, I'm an alcoholic and I need help. So the tablets made him severely ill because he used to drink with them.
Yeah.
So he stopped taking the tablets. The school, they never really stepped in and did much because we were being provided for as kids.
Yeah.
There weren't any issues with us as children.
Because your mum did all that.
Because my mum did everything. And obviously all my mum's family and friends, my dad's family and friends, they all knew what was going on. But again, that you don't step in and help or try and do anything to do it. I do remember my mum was really conscious being in South Africa. If she had left my dad at that time and us move in with her, she didn't earn enough money to be able to support us as a family. The government would have taken the kids away from her and split us up.
Right.
So she had to stay and be in that situation. I just remember that. Yeah.
So what was your worst memory?
It's quite a scary one, this, and it'll sort of put a perspective on things growing up and how bad they were at home. One of the worst things I remember is coming home from school one day. I found both my parents' cars were in the driveway, so I assumed they were both at home. I went inside, called for my mum, couldn't find her anywhere. Went down the stairs and I could hear my dad in the garage with a bandsaw. And I walked down to the garage and I saw him cutting up huge chunks of meat. So in my mind, I thought that he'd killed my mother.
Wow.
And was cutting her up into little pieces. I literally ran from there all the way to my boyfriend's house. I think it must have been about 5 kilometres away. I got to the house, asked his father to call the police and for us to go over to the house so that we couldn't save her. She was already in little pieces. We eventually got to the house, and as we drove up, my mom drove up in a car with somebody else. She'd been out with a friend, and what my dad was cutting up, we found out was a deer that he'd been given, and that was what he was cutting up. But that was extremely traumatizing as a child to see that, and for me to have been in that mindset to think that this is what my father's done to my mother.
Yeah.
That's
capable of doing.
Capable of doing. That's it. Yeah.
So what have you learned from your childhood experiences?
I think one of the most important lessons was to keep the children out of any arguments. I mean, the amount of times my brother and I were involved in arguments between my parents was countless, and it does damage you. It does damage what your perspective on life, and you then become angry and you think that's how you should sort problems out, is to scream and fight and carry on. So yeah, my children, as a result, I never ever let them witness any sort of issues or problems between us as parents. If we couldn't resolve it talking normally, we would then wait until the kids had gone to bed and we would then resolve the issue. And also, I mean, there were a number of times where my mum used to have to beg my father for money, for bread and milk or groceries, and from that I learned that I would never ever be in a position to beg a man for money, ever. I'll do whatever it takes to make my own money and make a success out of what I do. And I think it definitely worked, because I had my own really successful business back in South Africa. I did work sometimes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to able to get it to where it needed to be. In 2007 we emigrated over to the UK, and that was with the ex-husband and both my kids. The marriage between my ex-husband and I was already on rocky grounds, but we thought we could have a new start when we got over here. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and I ended up having to take my kids back to South Africa because I didn't really have any support or anything here.
Right.
But back in South Africa, I could have got back on my own 2 feet. In the beginning of 2008, my ex-husband kind of basically forced us to come back to the UK because his children are British and they fall under what's called the Hague Convention. And if I didn't bring them back, they'd have been extradited out of South Africa and I'd never seen them again. So I had to bring them back over to the UK. And I think the stress of all the issues at home back in South Africa, moving country twice, working 24 hours a day, I ended up with cancer when I came over to the UK. What
was going through your mind kind of at that stage?
Honestly, I knew it was a contained cancer that I'd been diagnosed with. It was entirely curable. But I went through like a mind-numbing stage where you're kind of non-emotional, and you think, when the consultant said to me that, worst case scenario, I might end up having to lose my thyroid, I might end up dying on the operating table, that kind of thing. I ended up writing out goodbye letters to the children. That was quite scary. To my mother, I wrote a goodbye letter, and to the ex-husband, I wrote one to him as well. And after all the adversity I'd had growing up as kids, the issues I've had just before the diagnosis, I was kind of wondering, what have I ever done to deserve this? I need a break in life. I need to be able to do something right. But then I thought at that stage, this kind of mindset, it's up to me to change. No one's going to change that mindset for you. You have to change that for yourself. I'd overcome all the childhood experiences. I'd made a success of my life up to that point. I ended up putting all the negativity back into the back of my mind and putting my head down and muscled my way through it, really.
So if there's anything you could have changed or you could go back, what would you change?
Obviously you can't change anything as a kid growing up. There's nothing you can really change. As an adult, I think maybe some of the decisions that I made initially with the ex-husband, moving over to this country to start with, maybe I wouldn't have done that so quickly, causing the issues of coming back, going backwards and forwards between countries. I think making a success of the businesses that I had, I don't think I'll change that decision at all, because again, that formed my children's perspective on life, and you work hard for what you want in life, you don't just get given it for free, that kind of thing. So I don't think I'll change anything like that.
How would your friends and family kind of describe you?
I don't burn any bridges when I am with friends and family. I try and leave things in a really positive light. I think most of my friends will say that I'm honest, sometimes too honest, because I'll call a spade, and I'll tell you what I think is right and what I think is wrong. I think I'm quite reliable, and I think they understand that I am quite reliable. If they ask me to do something, or if they rely on me as a friend to do anything, I'm absolutely there for them. I'll do everything I can to help them through things, especially with what I've been through. I'll try and be as helpful as I can. I do think that they'll probably look at me and go, I hide a lot of my emotional side, which I do. I know that I do. And more often than not, I make jokes out of situations. I do think that from a family's point of view, I think my mom still feels guilty in the fact that we grew up the way we did as children, in that sort of environment. But I don't think she can believe that either me or my brother have turned out to not have any addictive traits as such, or suffer from any long-term effects that I know of anyway. From what we've been through.
Do you consider yourself strong?
I think I do. I think my kind of moral, or what I live to is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think in my case that's true. I've been shot at, I've been blown up, I've been attacked, I've had cancer, and I'm still here standing.
You just won't go away.
I just won't go away. I've fought for what I wanted in life, and I've achieved most of what I've set out to achieve. I'm now happily married to a really nice guy, and I think we've got some fun times to look forward to. So yeah, I do think I'm a strong person.
Very good. If you could offer any words of advice to somebody who has kind of had some of your experiences, or having some bad experiences now, what would you say?
I think the most important thing I would say is make sure your mindset is where it needs to be to get over what you've been through. Find as much support and help as you can, and rely on those people, because they are there to be able to help you. So I think definitely that, from my perspective, is your mindset. I think if I hadn't have done that with my mindset and pushed that to the back of my mind and focused on the positivity and what I want in life, I think that's probably what I would say to somebody in my sort of situation.
Okay, I just have to be nosy. Is your brother and your mum still in South Africa, or are they here?
No, they're both still in South Africa.
Right, and do you go back and see them?
I go back as often as I can. I've tried to go back every year, but it doesn't work out like that. It gets expensive.
Yeah, but you've settled in Rochdale.
Yeah.
And has Rochdale helped you in any way?
A lot of people have said to me, why have you come to Rochdale? It's so unsafe, you're so insecure here because it's the worst place in the world. Well, it's not. I feel safe, I feel happy in Rochdale, and I think the fact that I've met the person that I'm married to now has helped a lot. I think the companies and the businesses that I've worked for have all been really supportive, and yeah, I think Rochdale itself has been good to me.
Good. And just finally, is there anybody either from Rochdale or from anywhere in the world, any woman ever inspired you?
I would have to say that my mom has inspired me. I can't say that I've ever looked up to her because of what she's been through and the fact that she wasn't strong enough to deal with it the way she should have dealt with it, or maybe there wasn't that help available to her at the time. But she's definitely inspired me to become a better person and not be in the situation that she was in.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of that, she definitely inspired me for that. So that's probably the woman that I would say has inspired me the most in life.
Brilliant.
To not be like her.
Yeah, I get that. To look forward.
To look forward to, yeah.
I get that. Well, that's great. Thank you, Liesl. I really appreciate that. And that was... had funny bits in and very kind of, deep and meaningful bits in, to that story. So
yeah.
I'm sure our listeners will love hearing about it.
Oh, thank you.